The studio of The View was alive with its usual buzz, but today, the energy felt almost electric. The audience, a mix of longtime fans of the show and celebrity followers, chatted excitedly, craning their necks toward the stage in anticipation of the morning's high-profile guest. Joy Behar, sharp-tongued and famously quick-witted, leaned forward in her chair, microphone clipped neatly to her lapel. She adjusted her glasses with a sly grin, her eyes twinkling with the mix of mischief and confidence that had defined her decades on television. Across from her sat Natalie Portman, poised and composed, her presence quiet yet commanding. The actress's calm demeanor and articulate manner had earned her fans worldwide, and today, she seemed ready to navigate whatever curveballs live television might throw at her. Backstage, the crew hustled quietly, adjusting cameras, checking sound levels, and running final checks on Natalie's microphone. A stylist hovered nearby, smoothing the folds of her elegant blazer, while a hair and makeup assistant did subtle touch-ups, making sure her look was flawless under the bright studio lights. Gaga might have had bold costumes, but Natalie's understated elegance radiated power in its own right, a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with Joy's more flamboyant energy. The audience murmured in anticipation, some snapping photos on phones, others whispering excitedly about the potential sparks from this live encounter. Joy began the segment with her signature energy, her voice carrying the warmth and sarcasm her audience had come to expect. "Natalie, it's fantastic to have you here on The View. You've done it all, acting, directing, activism. Honestly, your resume reads like a dream. But let's get to the question a lot of viewers are probably thinking. With all of this success, do you ever feel pressure to be perfect? To be flawless in every part of your life?" Natalie's eyes widened slightly at the phrasing, but her posture remained perfect, her back straight and hands folded neatly in her lap. Her voice, calm, deliberate, and composed, cut through the hum of the studio. "I think it's interesting that the assumption is that perfection is the goal," she said softly, but with an unmistakable firmness. "I believe growth, learning, and meaningful contribution are far more important than trying to meet some externally imposed idea of perfection. Life isn't a performance to satisfy others' expectations." Joy, however, leaned in closer, undeterred, her grin widening with a hint of playful mischief. "Sure, but Natalie, come on. You've done everything, Academy Award-winning performances, directing, speaking out on important issues. Honestly, who can compete with that?" She laughed lightly, anticipating the audience's laughter and expecting Natalie to respond with a self-deprecating quip, the kind that makes for a fun soundbite. But the reaction was nothing like Joy expected. Natalie's gaze remained steady, her lips curving into a polite but controlled smile. "Joy, with all due respect, I don't see my work or my life as competition. I'm not trying to win or meet a standard set by others. My focus is on doing meaningful work and staying true to my values. That's what drives me." The studio fell silent for a brief moment, the unexpected directness of Natalie's response cutting through the expected banter like a knife. Joy blinked, momentarily thrown off. She opened her mouth, ready to recover, but Natalie raised a hand gently, halting her mid-sentence. "I understand your intent, Joy," Natalie continued, her voice calm but precise, "and I know you're asking questions in the spirit of conversation. But sometimes, framing women's achievements in terms of pressure or perfectionism can be limiting. It implies that the value of their work is measured by comparison or by someone else's standards, rather than the impact of the work itself." The audience murmured softly, some leaning forward, others clapping quietly in recognition of the point Natalie had made. Even behind the cameras, crew members exchanged glances, noting the tension in the air. Lorraine Kelly, seated near the host's desk, offered a carefully polite smile, but her tightened jaw betrayed her awareness that this interview had already taken an unexpected turn. Joy attempted to recover with her signature humor, her voice slightly louder, attempting to regain the rhythm she had established over decades. "Oh, well, Natalie, I didn't mean to." Natalie's response, calm and unflinching, cut her off gently but firmly. "I understand, Joy, but it's important to recognize that even well-intended questions can unintentionally reduce someone's work or choices. My achievements are not a checklist to measure against others, and framing them as such diminishes the substance of what I've done." The audience reacted instantly, some clapped softly, others exchanged looks of surprise, and a few audibly whispered, "Wow." The shift in energy was palpable. What had started as a light celebrity interview had transformed into a rare live moment of clarity and authority. Joy, ever quick-witted, paused, blinking at the directness of Natalie's words. She opened her mouth again, as if searching for a retort, but Natalie's steady gaze held her in place, leaving no room for misinterpretation. I believe, Natalie continued, leaning forward slightly, that celebrating someone's work should be about the substance, the effort, and the integrity behind it, not about comparison, pressure, or a notion of being flawless. The audience erupted into quiet applause. The hum of excitement had replaced the nervous tension from earlier, and even Joy, usually ready with a sharp comeback, found herself momentarily speechless. The pause stretched for a beat longer than usual, the weight of the moment settling over the studio. Here was an accomplished actress, renowned for her intelligence and eloquence, asserting herself clearly, calmly, and unflinchingly in a live television setting. Joy finally exhaled and tried a softer, more conciliatory tone, attempting to steer the conversation back to neutral ground. Well, Natalie, I suppose you're right. But isn't it exhausting, managing all these different aspects of your life? The public, the career, the activism. Natalie's reply was immediate, precise, and firm, yet devoid of aggression. It's not exhausting because I do these things intentionally. My focus isn't on how others perceive me or whether I meet some arbitrary standard. I focus on doing work that has meaning, on learning from experiences, and on contributing positively where I can. That is what sustains me, not the pressure of comparison or perfectionism. The cameras rolled live again after a brief commercial break, and the atmosphere in the studio had shifted palpably. The audience was no longer simply anticipating a celebrity interview, they were now witnessing a tense and charged encounter between two strong personalities. Joy Behar, normally quick with humor and biting commentary, appeared slightly unsettled but determined to regain her footing. She adjusted her glasses and leaned forward, trying to re-establish her trademark energy. Natalie Portman, seated across from her, remained composed, her posture upright, her hands folded lightly in her lap, eyes steady and unwavering. Joy began cautiously, a flicker of her signature wit creeping back in. All right, Natalie, let's see if I can get back in the game here. You've handled my questions with such grace, but come on, don't you think a little competition is healthy? Doesn't it push us to grow and achieve more? The audience murmured softly, some leaning forward in anticipation, sensing that the exchange could reach another pivotal moment. Natalie's gaze met Joy's directly, her calm tone slicing through the tension like a scalpel. Competition can be healthy when it's internal, driven by personal goals and self-improvement. But when it's framed as how others measure up to you, or as a way to create judgment or comparison, it becomes external validation. And external validation can be damaging, not empowering. A hush fell over the studio. The subtle shift in tone was unmistakable. Joy, usually in complete control of her segments, blinked, momentarily speechless at the directness and clarity of Natalie's response. She opened her mouth to respond, but Natalie continued, leaning slightly forward, her voice steady and deliberate. I'm not here to dismiss anyone's perspective, Joy, and I appreciate the questions. But framing achievements, particularly women's achievements, in terms of societal expectations or comparative measures can unintentionally diminish them. That's why I want to redirect the conversation toward substance and impact rather than metrics of perfection or competition. The audience reacted instantly, soft applause rippled through the rows, and a few viewers gasped audibly, impressed by the assertiveness and composure of Natalie Portman. Crew members behind the cameras exchanged knowing glances. This was the kind of live television moment that could go viral instantly. Even Lorraine Kelly, who had been observing the tension from her seat, subtly leaned forward, her expression a mix of admiration and surprise. Joy attempted to recover her footing with a laugh, but it came out slightly forced. Well, Natalie, I suppose that's fair. But surely, with everything on your plate, acting, directing, advocacy, it must be exhausting at times. Doesn't all this scrutiny ever wear on you? Natalie's eyes softened just a fraction, but her voice remained precise, confident, and unwavering. I don't see it as exhausting because I approach it intentionally. My focus isn't on what others think or on fitting someone else's mold. It's about doing meaningful work, learning from the experiences, and contributing where I can. That is what sustains me, not the pressure to perform for external approval. The audience reacted again, a louder swell of applause this time, some standing, some clapping vigorously. It was clear that Natalie's words resonated deeply with the viewers, who appreciated the candid, articulate perspective she was sharing. Even the camera crew, usually unnoticed by the public, exchanged impressed looks, This was a rare instance where a guest had completely taken command of a live television segment without losing composure or poise. Joy paused, blinking rapidly, her expression revealing a mixture of surprise and respect. She had faced countless guests in her career, many sharp-tongued or unfiltered, but few had matched her wit with such calm, articulate authority. She straightened in her chair, a small, forced laugh escaping as she tried to regain her usual playful energy. All right, Natalie, I get it. But isn't there ever a moment where you just want to respond, to push back against critics or the media? Natalie's response was immediate, measured, and firm. I respond, but I choose how I respond. I don't allow criticism or public perception to dictate my choices or my work. Responding doesn't mean engaging with every comment or opinion. Responding means staying true to your values, your vision, and your work. That is what matters. The audience murmured appreciatively, the applause growing again. Some people leaned forward.